Yes, I'm all set. Thank you.
Yeah.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's Policy and Personnel Committee meeting. I'm stepping in today for Mike, who was not able to join us this morning, unfortunately. And I'd like to call the meeting to order. The time is now 9:02 a.m. Stephanie, will you please take attendance?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Eva Bermudez Zimmerman.
Present.
Thank you. Ellen McKitterick.
Present.
Dave Salazar Austin. He has not joined us yet.
He reported he would not be able to join us today.
Thank you for the confirmation. Mike Soltis will not be joining us, and Holly Williams.
Present.
Thank you. We do not have a quorum.
Yes, we do.
Oh.
We have 3 out of
Mike?
5.
Yes, sorry. Yes. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's
Should have
okay.
been that a little bit nicer, but we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Thank you for confirming that. And I'd also like to acknowledge any public members we have this morning. And so since we have a quorum, we can move through our agenda as planned. And so I'd like to ask the committee for a review of the January 7th, 2025 minutes and a motion to approve.
Oops. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. And a second?
Eva, are you able to second it? I'm not sure if we've lost connectivity with Eva.
Oh, yep.
We'll just give her a second to hop back on. Don't see her. She's back.
Okay.
Hi, Ava. Could you second, are you able to second Ellen's motion for the meeting minutes?
Finally, I can. I was in whatever Wi-Fi land of buffering. I can second that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Thank you both. So Michael, you're going to give us an update this morning on the revisions to the employee handbook.
Absolutely. Thank you, Holly. And good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen.
We can see your screen, Michael.
Thank you for the confirmation. So the committee may remember that back in December, the board had voted to post for notice and comment some recommended revisions to the employee handbook. This is a list of sort of what was in that initial set of revisions. I won't go through it all in detail here. The notice and comment period basically went from mid-December through mid-January. We did not receive any comments from the general public. However, we did receive some comments and had some discussions internally, which makes sense since this is a handbook, meant for employees of the authority. So there were some changes made to the recommended revisions that I've captured here. I also sent a copy to the entire committee. The red line reflects all the changes. The red line that has a blue highlight reflects the sort of more recent revisions after the notice and comment period concluded. So walking through that real quickly, I divided into cosmetic versus substantive, just so it wasn't one giant list, but really not too much difference between the two. The first item on the list on the substantive was actually not based on comments. It was actually based on guidance we finally received from the state of Connecticut as to how the state will comply with the new paid sick leave law that went into effect on January 1st. Essentially, they're saying that you use 3 days of your PL time and 2 days of your sick family that account for the 5 days under the paid sick leave program. No change to the amount of accruals that folks get, just really about how it gets accounted for. I don't think there's any real substantive change beyond maybe a very minor factor. If you're taking sick time and our policy could require you to submit a med cert, if you submit it under this program, there's no proof that's required that can be required, so the employer can't ask for that med cert. So you happen to use some of your sick time under this program. That's really the only substantive change that matters to us. As I said, it's mostly an accounting situation. And it's a little more confusing, even though you might be using it for your own personal illness, you might have to account for it under the sick family time. That's what the state decided to do for the program. And speaking of sick family time, we also in the handbook expanded the use of sick family time from 5 days to 10 days per calendar year. This just aligns us with what the state does, both for union and non-union employees. So substantive change for us, but just keeping us in line with the rest of the state. Another change we made was earlier we had added a requirement that everyone's core hours should include Monday to Friday, 9:30 to 3 p.m. Your start and stop time might be a little bit before, a little bit after to get your 8 hours in, but they should always include those times. We did add an exception that the CEO can approve some folks for regular hours that don't always include that time. Primarily meant for the outreach team that may have events on a consistent basis, either after regular hours or potentially on the weekend. So their regular schedule can be potentially outside those core hours. Flex time, which is basically that sort of ad hoc use where you have an appointment or something like that, and you're making up the time within the same period. We added a little bit of language around that. If the flex time is for less than 60 minutes, you do not need prior approval from your supervisor as long as they're aware of it. If it's more than 60 minutes, you do need prior approval. And then we also added a line that said regular use of flex time can lead to a conversation with your supervisor about the need to potentially change your regular work schedule, since if you're using it habitually or consistently in the same manner, maybe you should just change your underlying work schedule. When it comes to notification for vacation or comp time and the use of that time, the original language basically said if it's less than a week, then you must give 2 days notice. And if it's more than a week, you must give 2 weeks notice. We decided to adjust that so it's more of a sliding scale. Basically, take the amount of time you're going to be out and make sure you notify your manager at least double that time. So if you're going to be out for 1 day, notify your manager and get that approval more than 2 days before that absence occurs. And then finally, the last on the substantive list is what I'm calling recurrent occasions. Occasions is sort of the unscheduled absences where if you accumulated enough of them in a period of time, it may be a conversation with your manager about your absence history. So typically, you're sick in the morning, you have to call in and say you can't attend. That might be an occasion. What we wanted to make clear is if you have that instance occurs, you try to come back to work and then have to go out again for the same reason. We don't want that to be 2 separate, marks against you. That's just treated as the continuation of the original one. The rule is basically if you return to work for less than 2 days and then go back out again for the same reason, it's treated as a continuation of the first reason. That's basically it for the substantive changes. Hopefully nothing too controversial. For cosmetic, just a few things, updated table of contents. I found a few more examples of inconsistent use of terms, referring to the people as you versus employees, so I fixed those. The original language had reference to if you are terminated from employment or leave employment, you need to return all beepers. We don't hand out beepers. That's not a thing anymore. So change it to more generic electronic equipment so we can make sure it captures things like monitors, mouse, keyboard, things like that you might have gotten from the state or the authority. And then finally, we added the language around notification periods for certain absences that have specific rules, for example, military leave or FMLA. The reason I put this under cosmetic is the rule always applied. These notice periods have always been part of the requirements. We just never officially called them out in the handbook. So I thought it was useful for employees to be aware so they don't have to go looking up, the various sections of USARA to figure out when they have to give military leave notice. So as I said, hopefully nothing too controversial. The hope is that the board shares with the board next week and they vote to officially adopt it. But before we get there, I am happy to take any questions that the committee may have.
All right. Thank you, Michael. We appreciate that update. And Erin, you're going to provide us with an update on staffing today.
Thank you so much. So I just realized we were basically at the 5-year anniversary of when Andrea was hired as the authority's first employee. We now have 45 people on staff. So we've done a lot of growing in the last 5 years. Our growth rate has definitely slowed down from those early years. And so what I would like to do is really continue to think strategically about our needs. We never fill a position that we don't need, but I really want to think about growth and creating room in the org chart for promotional opportunities and career development for our existing staff. Kind of the first people we hired were all kind of essentially our senior leadership, and sort of we kind of grew downward, and now I just kind of want to make sure we're thinking about growth upwards. The first sort of move in that is like promoting Jess to expand her responsibilities from outreach and engagement to include explicit responsibility to also be thinking about the experience of employers. So we'll be changing her title to Chief Experience Officer, since she'll be responsible for sort of overseeing the experience of workers, as well as employers and other stakeholders. On the employer side, this includes the employer registration experience. It will not include contributions, that will stay with finance, but just sort of the other elements that an employer engages with us to really try to put some focus and attention on that area. And then I'm currently working with each of my senior staff to talk about, okay, what do we have? What is the span of control? Can we create some working lead titles? Again, just to recognize that we are growing. We are a much larger organization than we used to be. And we want to make sure that we recognize and talent. We want to retain good staff. And part of that is creating growth opportunities. And we're more complicated than we used to be. So just wanted to share that approach with you all, as you are the policy and personnel committee, and get your thoughts and feedback.
So I think that I'll just add some comments. I think that it's great that you, at this point in the organization's evolution, that you're thinking about kind of where your current staff's growth can go. I think that's an important inflection point for any organization, particularly one that kind of started not organically, but started out of nothing. So I think that that's great. And I think that that will kind of allow you to see if there's any holes in the organizational structure or restructuring that needs to happen so that you can meet the needs of both the beneficiaries and employers. So I think this is a great time to be doing that type of work. Those are really all my general comments. Did anybody else have anything to say? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that update. I can't believe it's been 5 years.
It's crazy.
It's really crazy. All right. So then you're going to lead us in a discussion about the process for setting and reviewing salary levels.
Yes. So this agenda item came from a conversation that I had with Mike Soltis after the January committee meeting and board meeting, where we were talking about the how we're always asking the board to approve the salary increases that occur in existing or with the traditional state agencies, and also it was related to the board's assessment for my position and my salary. So he just really wanted me to share what we generally have been doing, so that you are aware of it and you can add input. It's definitely a dynamic process. Per our statute, employees of the Paid Leave Authority who are in jobs that are comparable to existing classified jobs by people who are represented by collective bargaining. So really our IT and some of our IT folks and some of our financial folks. They are incomparable jobs. They are put into those job titles. They are considered to be classified state employees. They are represented by the applicable union. In our case, we have employees in 3 unions. We've got clerical, we've got administrative and residual, which is P5, and then we've got engineering and scientific, which is P4. For folks who are in positions that do not have a comparable in existing state government, in a unionized position in existing classified service, I should say, they are unclassified and not represented by collective bargaining. So that's our divide. It's about 1/3 to 2/3. From a salary perspective, the folks who are unionized and in classified positions, their salaries are set by the state through collective bargaining process. We just follow along. For the folks who are unclassified, including me, we are all in state speak in the VR, or variable rate pay plan, which is sort of the state's mechanism for you can set any salary as applicable from 99 cents to, I think 999,000, I think is the core limit. We don't have anybody in that on either end of the extreme. So we have a great deal of discretion. In exercising our discretion, we do look for comparables so that we're making sure that the salary rates and ranges are applicable or appropriate. I look at the job specs for managers and executives in existing state government, right? There are managerial pay plans and executive pay plans that provide us with some sort of rough comparisons. We also look at other quasis. There are over a dozen quasi-public state agencies. All of the quasis are unique. Each of the quasis is unique in that they are set up around a specific statutory goal. But there are some commonalities. We all have IT, for example. We all have certain elements where looking at what they are earning or providing their employees helps us make sure that we're in the right ballpark. Now there are over a dozen paid leave programs across the country. We're the only ones where the paid leave program is sort of placed on its own as opposed to being part of a larger agency, but it is still useful to see what they have and kind of where they're looking. And then finally, we do look at sort of the general market, really looking at nonprofits in particular to get a sense of what the market would bear. So those are generally the 4 factors we look at when we're looking to set salary. And so we have so many different factors because we are different. And so, there's not a simple one-to-one equivalence. So we really do look at these things. And also, because I've been trained in the state for 20 years, the sort of principles of equity that kind of go into how the state sets salaries, I try to incorporate in. So we do work with our HR partners at DAS and kind of come up with what we think are appropriate salaries. So that's the summary that I wanted to share with you. Again, happy to hear feedback from you about other things that we should consider or things that you would like more explanation on.
So I know Mike asked this question, but I think that the process you use where you're trying to benchmark it to both similar industry, similarly situated businesses, as well as position types, I think is a positive step. I actually have one question though, with regards to the non-unionized positions. If you wanted to hire a new, and I guess I'm just asking for confirmation. If you wanted to, like, say you wanted a deputy or something like that, do you need to follow the same DAS process? Okay, that's what I thought, because those individuals are, it would consider a non-unionized managerial position. So you through the board process and your executive role can spec that out as appropriate so that it's tailored to the authority itself.
Correct. So
Okay.
the statute says that we are not subject to the traditional DAS OPM position review process, even for the unionized employees. So we hire who we hire. We determine the positions that we need. If the position is comparable to a unionized position, the person will be deemed to be classified, but we don't go through the position approval process, even for those classified employees.
Right. Okay. That's what I had thought. So thank you for confirming.
Yeah. And just to be clear, one of the ways that we make sure the board is aware of what we're doing is through the budget process. So, which is what we're just starting with this month with everybody. So we talk about staffing levels and we identify the vacancies. And so we do make sure that we are, when we set our staffing levels and say how much we want and put in our vacancies as part of the budget documentation, that's sort of how we make sure the board is has their oversight power. But if you ever do want more detail, you know, we post our we include the org chart in our annual report, but we can always share that more frequently if people, particularly this committee, would like to see that more frequently.
Right. Okay. That's helpful. Do any board members have any additional questions? We have a small group today. All right, thank you. So we're on to any old business. Does anybody have any old business? No. Any new business? Don't see any. All right, so may I have a motion to adjourn this morning's meeting?
Good motion.
Thank you. Ava, are you able to second Ellen's motion?
I can second, but I think my video is not working. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries and our meeting this morning is adjourned at 9:24. I hope everybody has a good rest of their Tuesday.
Thank you,
Take care.
everyone.
Good to see
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.